Couple Fam, thank you so much for tuning back in. I'm your host, Brianna Joanne, and it is a pleasure to have you all here, so thank you so much for listening and watching. As some of you may know, if you've seen last week's episode, I talked about acceptance, forgiveness, repentance, and healing. And with that being said, today, for this week's episode, I would like to share a little bit more about my previous marriage and divorce that I shared a little bit about in last week's episode. And with that being said, I want to protect my ex-husband's identity. So I will be referring to him as T throughout the rest of this video. And as a disclaimer, I am not making this episode to bash or hate on any of my exes, especially my ex-husband, who I'll be talking about today. And so I just want to use this as a platform and a safe space to share my experience. And, you know, if there's any of you guys out there who may be going through something similar, whether you were married or not, you know, whether you're male or female, I just want you guys to know that you are not alone, that I love you, that God loves you so, so very much. And yeah. If any of you guys need to talk or just need a shoulder to cry on or someone to listen to, my DMs are open 24/7 for each and every one of you guys. I love you guys so much, and let's get into today's video, marriage and divorce. So I'm going to start off by giving you guys a little bit of a backstory on how I met T, where we met, how long we were dating before we got married. Back in March of 2021, I believe it was even March 21st of 2021, I received a Instagram direct message, a DM from T, and it said something along the lines of, "Hey, I saw your photography page and I want to get a shoot in." And I replied and I was like, "Bet, let's do it, let me know." And so I clicked on his Instagram account just to see what he looked like, and I saw that he was also stationed where I was at. And so I was like, okay, so maybe this can actually happen. Maybe we can get a photo shoot in, since, you know, we live in the same state and are stationed on the same base. And so he was like, add me on Snapchat. So I added him. And instantly he texted me and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm about to go to the gym. What about you?" And he just so happened to be going to the same gym as me, and he was already there that night when we were texting back and forth. And so basically, long story short, we met up after our workout at the gym, and we sat and talked in his car for I think like 2 to 4 hours. And then we got like some food at like Sonic or something, and he dropped me home after that. But we spent like our first 2 weeks after that day just getting to know each other, going on dates, just talking in the car, not doing anything sexual, no kissing, no hugging, no holding hands, none of that. We genuinely just wanted to get to know each other. So it felt really real for me in the beginning. But as most of y'all know, the honeymoon phase always seems to die down nowadays really quickly. And it did. So we were together for about 6 to 7 months before we got married. We were never engaged. So about that, we were talking about marriage within like our 5th to 6th month of dating each other, and it was always just like something playful. But because we were talking about marriage that early on into our relationship, obviously we were pretty serious about each other. We started dating in April, and then in September 10th of 2021 is when we got married. And I remember texting him one day, and I was just like, let's do it. Because he had been telling me that whole week how he wanted to get married, and I was like, yeah, okay. So we did it. Was it the best decision we've ever made? Probably not. But we did, so there was no going back at this point. We did some research on, where to get married and how to get married the quickest. And personally, my reasons of being married to this man was because I truly loved him and I wanted to live with him. I wanted to grow old with him. I wanted to have a future with him and have kids with him one day and all of that. I am not going to speak on his behalf because, for one, I don't want to put words in his mouth and make it seem like he's such a bad person and he only married me for the money. Because I do truly believe that, for the most part, this man truly did love me, whether anyone wants to believe that or not. So I'm not going to speak about how he felt. I'm just going to speak about how I felt throughout the marriage. We got married September 10th of 2021, and it was good for the first week. I remember the first Sunday after we got married at the courthouse. I don't remember exactly what happened or what caused me to thinking this, but I was just like, man, I made a mistake. I already wanted a divorce that quickly. To give a little bit of a backstory, and I know some of you guys are gonna go crazy in my DMs or my comments being like, why did you marry this man? But let me tell y'all first. I had suspected that he was cheating on me in April when we first started dating. And so I'm not the type of girlfriend or person that likes to go on, my significant other's phone, because I like to respect their privacy. And I've never been on any of my ex's phones unless they gave me the permission to or they wanted to show me something. I remember he paid me in food and roses one day to do his schoolwork, his college work. And so I did. And as I was doing it, I had his MacBook. And as I was doing it, something popped up on the corner, a little notification, and it said memories from last month or whatever. And I was like, well, that's interesting because we started talking last month. But in the little box, there was photos of another girl. And I didn't think too much of it, but I was like, maybe it's just, someone he used to talk to or one of his exes, and he just forgot to delete it because it was on his MacBook, so I didn't even know if it was on his phone or not. And so as I was doing his work, it popped up again 10 minutes later. And so I was like, do I open it? Do I open it? Do I open it? I was like, no. And I kept going back and forth with myself, so I opened it. And I really wish I didn't, but I'm kind of glad I did. And there was just pictures and videos and screenshots of them FaceTiming. And the one that bothered me the most is that she physically sent him pictures in the mail of her, in bikinis and, selfies and whatnot. And he had it on his dashboard in his car. And the date was the date of these pictures and these videos and stuff were the time when we were talking to each other, talking, when we first met and when we first started dating. So I was like, well, I really love him. I really like him. And so I kind of brushed it off because I was like, well, I don't know the full truth, and I don't want him to know that I was snooping on his stuff, because I really wasn't trying to. So yeah, that happened. And that was the only instance I knew of him ever really, like, I guess, cheating on me. And so throughout our relationship, I brought it up like once or twice. And he kept saying how that was just his friend, that was just his friend. And I didn't believe it. I didn't buy it. But I was like, people make mistakes. I asked the girl and I asked T. I was like, have you guys ever met up? Have you guys ever done anything intimate? Any of that? And they both said the same story, which I still didn't buy, and I don't buy to this day, was that they were mutual friends in high school, or they met through T's brother. And so they never met in person before, but they always knew of each other because they both went to the same high school in Texas. And so they started talking in 2021. And they also claim the reason why they were talking was because she needed a shoulder to cry on. She needed a friend because she didn't have many. She sent him photographs and they claimed they were just friends, and like he put it on his dashboard. That to this day, like, it's not something I care about anymore, but I don't know the full truth to that, and I will never know, and that's just to protect my peace. So that was really the only red flag that I saw before marrying him. But like I said before, I didn't know the full truth, and I also didn't want him to know that I was snooping on his stuff, so I didn't want any problems. And so I was like, well, I need to forgive him. I love him, so I did. What I'm about to talk about is very, very sensitive. So if you are uncomfortable when it comes to topics with domestic violence and abuse, feel free to click away or click out of this video. I just want to use that as a disclaimer before I start talking about it. But our relationship was going really well while we were married, from September of 2021 all the way up until, I would say, May of 2022. And May of 2022, we started arguing more than ever over the littlest things, over the most childish things on both our ends. And we just weren't getting along. We couldn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. The moment we got married, we stopped dating each other. We stopped hanging out. We stopped spending time together. And I will say, I genuinely tried my best. I tried my best to always be there for him, always hang out with him. And yeah, I made my mistakes. He's made his list of mistakes. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we never hung out or we never spent time together. It was just his version of spending time together was staying in bed every night whenever he got home and I got home from work, and just chilling, being on our phones, watching movies, but not really interacting or talking to each other. And so that isn't and never will be my version of hanging out with my significant other. And I'm not saying that we have to do things that cost a lot of money, but when you're doing something that you just do every single night, as in laying in bed, I didn't take it as he really wanted to spend time with me, because most of the time he was just like either playing video games or texting somebody or on Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. He wasn't giving me the attention that I thought I deserved. And so we started arguing a lot in May. And then in June is when our marriage and our relationship completely just failed and it stopped. So I don't want to go into every single detail because it would take me hours to explain everything. But everything that I'm going to be sharing with you guys is things that like I am comfortable with talking about. Between June 13th and June 14th of 2022 is the last day my ex-husband and I were ever really together, living under the same roof. And so we had just come back home the day before, I think on June 12th. We just both came back from leave for 2 weeks. We took leave on the same day and came back on the same day 2 weeks later. However, I was planning on leaving the house after him and coming back home before him. Not for any reason, but I usually just like to leave at a later time because I drive home to California every single time because of my dog. So I was planning on leaving around like midnight or 1 or 2 a.m. so that I could like pack and rest and then get the show on the road. And he was planning on going to Texas with one of his buddies and one of his other friends that flew down from Indiana, and they were all gonna carpool to Texas together. So as I was packing my car one night before I left to California, I remember T had told me that, hey baby, I'm leaving. I was like, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, I love you, drive safe, be safe. So I'm like packing all my clothes and he's texting me like, what time are you leaving? This and that. And he told me he was already 2 hours into his drive and he had like, I think 8 or 10 more hours, something like that. And so I really thought he left already. And that's kind of where he messed up, because as I was packing my car, I was going in and out of the house, and I saw his car come into my apartment complex. And I know exactly what his car looks like, his license plate number, especially their out-of-state plates. So I recognized his car. I can recognize his car from a mile away. And I did. And I texted him and I was like, because the reason why I texted him was because the moment I looked in that direction and I saw his car coming towards my apartment complex, his car like made a U-turn and left. And so I texted him. I was like, I thought you left already. What are you still doing here? LOL. And I was genuinely curious. I wasn't mad or anything, but I was just like, wait, he just lied to me because he said that he was 2 hours into his drive. And he was like, oh, I forgot my gun at the crib, but I remembered that I left it at my friend's crib. And so I was like, well, I thought you said that you left already. What are you still doing here? And then he made up like some story saying that, yeah, I was just joking. I'm gonna leave now though for sure, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, all right. So before I leave to California, I always make sure that my house is like spot clean, that I wipe everything down, that I make my bed, and that I lock the door, turn off the lights, everything. So I get back home from California, spending time with my family on leave, thinking that I'm gonna come home to a house untouched, clean, and everything. But I was wrong. And this is the first time it happened, and obviously the last. But I came home and there were party cups everywhere, and our photos and our initials were taken down off the wall. My bed was messed up, and so I just was walking around the house like, what happened? Like, what went on in the last 2 weeks I was gone? So I text him, and I'm instantly thinking that like someone broke into our house and threw a party. I really thought that, because I was like, there's no way. My husband said that he left. He said that he went to Texas. I even saw him post on Instagram on his stories that he was in Texas. So I was like, there's no way. And so I texted him, and I was like, hey, I just got home. Did you happen to give anyone the keys to our house? And he's like, no, why? And I was like, because our house is a mess. Things are taken down, moved out of place. There's party cups everywhere. The bed's messed up. What happened? And he was like, oh, I gave my friend a key to our house while we were gone because he said he wanted to have a girl over. And so I was like, well, I'm going to say his name is E. So I was like, well, E lives down the street, literally on the same street as us, just a few complexes over. And I was like, this man has been living in this his apartment complex for like 4 or 5 months now. Why does he need to be in our apartment, especially when we're not home? So he was like, well, E's crib is not fully furnished and he really wanted to impress this girl, yada, yada, yada. So again, just like the whole situation that happened in April when we were just boyfriend and girlfriend, I brushed it off. I was like, okay, whatever. Like, it's just a waste of energy. Like, I don't even have the time right now to be arguing about this. And so he gets home and, we say hi to each other and everything. And I go to the gym later that night, and he goes to play basketball. And so I'm looking for my hair product throughout the house. It's like this gold bottle. It's like this argan oil that I always use that I got from Ulta. And I know that he likes to borrow my stuff a lot of the time and use it and take it without asking. So, but I also don't like to snoop through people's stuff without asking or telling them. But I was like, he wasn't answering his phone because he was playing basketball at the gym, and I was really like frustrated looking for my hair product, just trying to get out the house and go to the gym. And so I walk into our guest bedroom where he has like all his clothes, because our closet in our bedroom was really small. And so I see his red backpack sitting at the edge of the bed, and there's like this small zipper in the middle of it. It has like 6 different zippers, and in the middle of it there's like this small zipper, and it was open, and I didn't want to touch it, right? But I just kind of like lean over, and instantly I see a condom, and I'm like, what? Like, why does this man have a condom in his bag? Like, we don't use protection, because I have birth control, and I'm not saying we were trying to have a baby or anything, but we just never used protection. And so I was baffled. I was like, why does he have condoms? So I take it out of his bag, I take a screenshot of it, and I ask him, and I send it to him. I'm like, hey, I was looking for my hair product, and I ended up finding my hair product in his bag next to the condom. But I took a picture of the condom and I sent it to him, and I was like, why is this condom in your bag? And he gave me some story saying that his brother gave it to him just in case, because he wanted to start using protection with me. And I was like, okay, well, why didn't we have this talk before? Or why didn't we ever use protection before? We've been together for over a year now. So I was confused. I was just like, man, what other things can I find? Because I didn't buy that story that he gave me about how his brother gave it to him. And because I put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, well, if you want to start using protection, why is there only one condom? And then I start looking through more in the bag, and there's like 2 other condoms from like different brands. And I'm just like, what? I'm like so confused. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should tell him or, tell anyone and ask anyone for advice of what I should do or what's going on or whatever. So I start looking through his duffel bag that he brought home from Texas from when he was on leave, and he didn't even try hiding it. The first thing that was on the top was a Victoria's Secret gift card, and there was a receipt of basically him in Texas. He bought some girl lingerie, and the reason why I say he bought some girl lingerie because he doesn't have any sisters, and I mean he has a little sister, but he wouldn't buy her or his mom lingerie, I don't think. So I was just like, what? Like, he's never bought me anything from Victoria's Secret, and if he bought me something from Victoria's Secret, then where is it at? Why is it not here? And he never gave me anything from Victoria's Secret. So I instantly was like, whoa, like, this man is cheating, and we gotta have a talk. So I went to the gym, and I tried to just brush everything off just so that I can focus on my workout. And he texts me asking me if I want to go watch the game with him at his buddy's house. And I was like, yeah, what time? And he was like, right now. And I was like, oh, well, I'm at the gym. And he knew I was at the gym. And he was like, yeah, the game starts in 10 minutes, so never mind. That was probably the first and the only time where he's ever invited me to hang out with him at his friend's house, or let alone just hang out with him outside of the house. And so I really wanted to go, but I was like, whatever. And so I got home from the gym, and it was already like 11:30, and I was like, hey, I just cooked dinner, like, where you at? And he said, oh, I'm still here, we're playing drinking games. So I'm thinking, like, this man's about to come home drunk. Mind you, he's also underage at the time. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, okay, when are you coming home? He's like, I'll be there soon or whatever. And then it got to like 12:30, and I was sitting on the couch by myself, and I was just like thinking, because I also didn't like to go to bed without him, or to eat without him. So I literally waited for him all night. And so I was just sitting there on the couch by myself, and my mind was racing, and I was like, is he cheating on me? He is or he isn't, yada, yada, yada. And I texted him, and I was like, hey, can you get me a pregnancy test at the store? I've missed my period, and I'm not feeling well. And he was like, what do you mean? He's like, are you pregnant? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I just want to make sure there's nothing wrong with me. Mind you, like I said earlier, I'm on birth control, and I was on birth control at the time as well. But I get my periods like every now and then. But at that time, I didn't get my period for like a whole 2 months, which wasn't common for me. And I was already on my birth control for like a year before you say anything. So I was just like, no, I just want to be sure. I highly doubt I'm pregnant though, because, And so he was like just talking about how we're not having a baby and jumping to conclusions, basically, that we're not going to have a baby together, and that if we do, he said that he was going to basically unalive this child and unalive me. And that's not the first time he said something like that. But anytime he said it, he would just be like, oh, I'm just kidding. Like, you need to chill. It's just a joke. Of course, I want to have kids with you. But this time, I was just like, okay, man, like, stop with the jokes. Like, I'm not feeling good, Just please get me a pregnancy test. And then he's like, okay. Well, he came home and never ended up getting me a pregnancy test. And we just kept arguing because he kept talking to me crazy, talking about how he was going to unalive me and the baby if that were to ever happen. So I was like, you know what? I'm done with this man. Like, I've already basically accused him or suspected him of cheating before. And then before, when we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and then I suspected him of cheating again literally the day before all of this went down. And so I was like, yeah, enough is enough. So I grabbed all his stuff in the guest bedroom and I took it out of the closet and I started putting it in bags. And I was like, I texted him, I was like, hey, and I took a video of all his stuff so he knows that, like, I wasn't gonna I didn't damage any of his stuff or anything like that. Like, I'm not crazy. So I was like, you need to get your stuff, come home and leave and find your own place, because I'm not dealing with this stuff anymore. And I deserve to be treated better. I deserve more. And he was really mad. He was like, okay, I'm on the way right now. He pulled up. He got upstairs. I was in the other bedroom because I didn't know what he was going to say or do to me. So I just stayed in the other room. And I just hear him laughing because I had my door cracked. And he was just laughing. He was like, this crazy, bitch. He's like, she really did this. And I get up out the bed. I'm like, what? Like, this is not funny. And he starts recording everything and then, like, recording me. And he's, like, recording for, like, a good 10 minutes, even though I asked him politely to stop recording so that we could just talk as adults. We started talking, and whenever we do talk, he likes to have the lights off and he likes to lay down. And I never, like that, because I was just like, I don't know what kind of faces you're making in the dark. And, I want to be an adult and have an adult conversation and look each other in the face so that I know that you're taking me seriously. I was like, whatever. Just as long as he listens and he talks back, we're good. So we were talking like from 11 or like 12:30 at night all the way till like 5:30 in the morning. And we were just talking about, like, me suspecting him of cheating, him denying it, him saying I'm crazy for even thinking that, like, I'm pregnant, or even crazy for thinking that I will ever have a baby with him. And he was basically saying that he was gonna call, like, the cops on me for being crazy. He was like, you need a 5150 and you need to go to a psych ward and this and that. And I was just like, where is all of this coming from? And so we were just going back and forth, arguing. At this point in time, like, we didn't, no one put hands on each other. We weren't raising each other's voices. And then I just got, like, really irritated out of nowhere because he was just talking to me really crazy. And I put the blanket over my head and I turned the other way and I tried to fall asleep. But I was texting my sergeant, my NCOIC at the time. And I was like, hey man, my husband and I are arguing pretty bad right now. I don't know if something's gonna happen, but if I call you and hang up, that means I need help. And if I call you twice and hang up, that means something bad really happened and I need you to call the police and give them my address. And he was like, okay. He kept asking me, like, who are you texting underneath the blanket. And so I get up and I go to the bathroom, which is right across from our bed. It's like 4 steps. And I close the door. I don't slam or anything. I just close the door. I don't lock it or anything as well. And I'm just, like, texting him. I'm sending the message, and right away T opens up the door and he's like, what are you doing? Like, who are you texting? And I, like, close my phone because I don't think he knew the password to my phone because I didn't know his password. And so he was like, he grabbed my phone out of my hand because I was like this, and he threw it on the bed. And then he grabbed me and pushed me on the bed and he was like, go to sleep. And he turned off the light, closed the door, started laughing, laid in bed. It's like, you don't need to be telling anybody about this situation or what we argue about or what we talk about, this and that, yada, yada, yada. And so then he was like, and we're not done talking. So we start talking again. He keeps telling me that like if I am pregnant, that I better get an abortion, otherwise he's gonna kill me, or I have the baby and he's gonna take the baby away from me and then like unalive me, and then send me to like a psych ward or whatever. And then I was just like, no, like, you're crazy. I was like, huh? Like, he really just, I remember like looking up at the ceiling. I was like, did he really just say that to me? Like, I said that out loud. And he's like, yeah, I did say that to you. And then I just started mumbling stuff. I don't remember exactly what I was saying. And he was like, if you have something to say, then say it with your chest. One thing led to another. I never, ever, and never will, never, ever laid a hand on him. Never raised my voice at him or anything throughout the whole relationship and on this night. And he's never laid his hand on me or raised his voice towards me prior to this situation. But for whatever reason, he had it in him that night, and he punched me a couple times in my stomach and punched me a couple times in my private part. Don't know what his intentions are, but to me it was basically saying like he wanted to abort the unborn child that was never existing, because long story short, I bought myself a pregnancy test at Walmart the next day and I was never pregnant. But I did go get a pap smear the next day, and so that's a whole nother story. Long story short, we ended up just falling asleep around like 5:30. He went to work at like 6 or 7:30 that next morning on like June 14th. And I went to work at 9 o'clock, as I always do every single day. And my NCOIC that was texting the night before was like, hey, what happened last night? Like, you never texted me back or called me or told me anything. And I told him what went on. And he was aware since May, since our relationship started going downhill. He was aware of like our serious arguments. So he was pretty aware of the type of person that my husband at the time was. Prior to that time, he never told me like you have to report or you should report or anything like that. He was kind of just like, a friend, and he was allowing me to just talk to him comfortably about like what I was going through. But when I told him about that night, that happened like between June 13th and June 14th, the night before, he was like, Brie, I'm no longer giving you an option as your sergeant and as your friend. Like, I am telling you, you have to report this because this is not okay. This man can go off hurting other people and doing this to other and multiple women. And so I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm just not the type of person who ever likes to see people face punishment or, get revenge on people or anything of that matter. And so I was like, oh, this might mean he might go to jail or something. And I was just like so stressed about it. And he was like, Brie, you need to do this for yourself and for other people he might be in relationships with. So I was like, okay. So we went down to our Sergeant First Class's office, and I just started crying. So I couldn't even talk. So my staff sergeant told him what was going on, and like we were only there for like a minute or two, and he was like, stop. He's like, I had enough of this. I heard enough. I don't even know everything yet, but I heard enough. And I hate that Brianna, one of my favorite soldiers, is sitting here in my office crying. Justice needs to be served. Something needs to happen. So both of them took me down the hallway to our first sergeant's office, told the first sergeant. Same thing happened. A minute or two we were there. He stopped us halfway. He was like, yeah, I heard enough. Please go down to the military police station right now. So me and my Sergeant First Class went, and we tried to file a report, but they told us because I lived off post, because I was married, I live off post, that they can only handle on post situations, which was understandable. So we went back, we talked to my first sergeant commander about it, and he was like, okay, so we did some more research. All you need to do is right after this, you need to call our local police department, our city's police department, and in whatever city that you live in, and you need to tell them what's going on, that you need to make a report, and that you would like a civilian protection order in effect today. And we will handle the military protection order today. So I got the military protective order handled, and he was like, you are not to talk to via phone call, text message, social media, live or see in person your husband ever again, until this case is solved and until the CPO, the civilian protection order, and the MPO is lifted, the military protection order. And so I was like, okay, too easy. So I got home, I made the phone call to my local police department. The officer was like, okay, we are going to send out an officer to your house within the next couple of minutes to do a written statement report and a verbal report. And so he came over. First thing he did when he walked into my apartment, he looked around. He asked me if I had any weapons or anything, or if I had anything in the house that he needed to be aware of, and I was like, no. And so we just sat down and I told him every single detail that happened that night, and the night leading up to it. And he asked to see my phone, and so he looked through. I sat next to him and I saw him reading a bunch of text messages from the night before and that night, and the morning of, because I ended up telling my husband the morning that I went to talk to my staff sergeant about it that I was gonna get my chain of command involved, just out of courtesy. That was the last text message that I ever sent him for a very long time. And so the cop left. He wrote down everything that I told him, and then he gave me a case number and left. And I think within the next day, not that same day, but within the next day or two, my husband T was booked into the county jail for 16 hours, and he was let out with a bail of I think $5,000 or $10,000. And I'm pretty sure either someone in his chain of command that he's really close with or one of his friends bailed him out, because at the time he didn't have much family support. His family also didn't know that we were even married to begin with. My parents and my grandparents didn't know I was married until recently this year, and his family wasn't aware until I told them. Later that year, probably a month or two later, I got a phone call from the Army's Family Advocacy Program, other known as FAP, and this lady, she was just basically telling me that she was gonna work with me throughout the entire case, and that if I had any questions or I wanted to talk to her about anything, that I could. And she was sweet and she was helpful, and I love her. Then I also got assigned an officer from my base's SVC, which is the Army Special Victim Council. It's kind of like a free lawyer, I guess you could say, for the victims. And so I was very, very blessed to even have that, because I was afraid that I was going to have to spend a lot of money like my husband did for a lawyer, and luckily I didn't have to. I worked with them for a couple months, and at first they told me that he was going to get kicked out of the military, probably with an unhonorable discharge or an OTH, which means other than honorable, or a administrative discharge. So all three of those are bad in its own ways, because when you get out of the military, you want nothing but an honorable discharge, honestly. They were all basically explaining to me what consequences that he was probably gonna face and stuff like that. And this was all on the military side. And I also had to deal with this on the civilian side. So I got a letter in the mail a few times from the local police department saying that I needed to go to court. At the time, the first date that they gave me, I was on deployment, so I couldn't make it to my court date. And so the second date that they ended up giving me, I was able to make it, and I went. He was originally supposed to get a dishonorable discharge or even an OTH, but he ended up getting a general discharge with unhonorable actions, which I was not very happy with because I didn't even know exactly, I still don't know exactly when he got out of the Army. I didn't even know until he was already out for like a couple weeks what kind of discharge he ended up getting. And these are all things that I was supposed to be notified of throughout the entire process, but I wasn't. His chain of command and, you know, a lot of people that worked on this case failed to communicate a lot of things with me, so it was really upsetting. He got a general discharge with dishonorable actions, and there's nothing that I can do about that. And so I found out that he was cheating during our marriage after all of this happened. I went on deployment in August of 2022 until the end of September of that year. And so when we go in deployment here, we go to our base's airport, and usually it's early in the morning, and we just sit there and we wait for our flight to board our flight, and we just sit in the lobby for like hours. And so one of my buddies was deploying with me, and he was like, "Hey, how you doing? Like, I haven't talked to you or seen you in a minute. How are you and your husband?" And I was like, "Yeah, about that, you know." And I was supposed to be the only female deploying on this deployment, but there ended up being like 2 to like 4 other females. And so, which I didn't even know about till I got there, but I knew one girl that was deploying. I had just met her the day before at one of our briefings, and so we sat next to each other in the airport along with the guy who asked me how my husband and I were. And so all 3 of us were sitting there just waiting. And so I was telling him, you know, I was giving him the inside scoop of like, you know, kind of how we aren't together anymore and this and that. And I showed him the news article that my city posted all over Facebook, all over Instagram, all over the internet, all over the news, with like the picture of him getting booked into jail, and like the story that I shared with cops, and then like all the other documents that were released to the public by the courthouse. And I showed him the picture, and the girl that was sitting with us was right in the middle of us, so she was basically, you know, in on everything and listening to everything. And I give him my phone, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is what went on." And she gets a glimpse, and she sees like my husband's face, and she was like, "That's your husband?" And I'm instantly thinking like, okay, there is this beautiful girl that is probably his type sitting right next to me, and now she's telling me that she knows who my husband is. I was like, how can this get any worse? And, you know, this is not how I wanted the beginning of my deployment to even go before I even got there. And so I was like, "Yeah, why?" And she was like, "Let me see the picture, please." And I showed her, and she was like, "What's his name? And where does he work and stuff?" And I told her, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm sorry to tell you, but we've been talking for the past, like, I think she said like 4 months while we were married, like the beginning of this year." And she said nothing ever happened. She even like shared me all the text messages, and she told me all the stories. She said the only thing that ever happened was that like him and like one of his buddies went to her barracks room. So it was like him, T, one of his buddies, the girl, and one of her friends, and they had like a little like party or get together in her barracks room one night. And she claims that like that's the only time that they really like hung out in person, I guess. But they wouldn't talk like every single day, but they would like flirt with each other and like talk back and forth, and like he would always like swipe up on her stories and like comment and put heart eyes and stuff like that. So yeah, the man cheated on me. And so I spent the rest of my deployment like just confused. And imagine being outside of the United States, leaving the United States knowing that you got cheated on and you didn't know until like months later. Kind of like feeling that puts on your heart, and you just kind of want to get clarity. You just want to get all these questions asked, and that's exactly how I felt. I was just so confused. Fast forward to a couple months later, my sergeant, who is currently my NCOIC, he texted me one day out of the blue. It was like on a Saturday or Sunday, and he was like, "You were right about your husband." And I'm like, this man only knows of my husband. He's never talked to him. He's never met him or nothing. What is he talking about? So I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, your husband did cheat on you. And I'm like, well, he doesn't know about, how the last girl just told me that she was talking to him. Also, I want to add in before I get into this next story that girl, she did not know that my husband was married, in a relationship, had a significant other, or anything of that matter. And I 100% believe her, because T went by and told all these girls that he was, flirting with and mingling with, that, that wasn't his name, and that he was single, and all these lies. And there were even text messages where T invited girls over to my house saying, hey, I got this crib and I got this dog, and you should come over. So this girl ends up calling me, and she tells me everything, every single detail, everything that he's ever done to her and did with her. And it wasn't like the first girl where they only hung out once and they flirted for like 4 months. Like they were having like an actual relationship. Like they were sleeping over each other's houses, and they were like making future plans together, calling each other like babe and all these things. And I was just like, whoa. And just like the first girl, like she didn't know that he was married. She did tell me that he said that he had an abusive girlfriend, but not a wife or anything. And he was basically referring to me. So everything that was stated in that police report, everything that happened on the night of like June 13th to June 14th that he did to me, he was going around telling all these girls that like I was the one who did it to him. And I was like, whoa, like that's crazy, that's really crazy. He was really trying to turn the tables around on me. And so, yeah. So I found out months after that he cheated on me with 2 women, and who knows, this man probably cheated on me with multiple women throughout my relationship, especially throughout my marriage, because clearly he was comfortable and he knew how to be sneaky with it, and I trusted him. I even gave him a chance to prove to me that he was going to do better. But if there's anything that I know now, being a Christian who is firm in my faith, is that marriage, as it says in Hebrews chapter 13 verse 4, it says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefined, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous." And so I thought for the longest time that and this was before I really knew anything about the Bible and anything about God's word, is like I should always just tough it out and stay with my husband, because marriage is only made for one man and one woman, and all these things. And I started to read more and get closer to God and be stronger in my faith and my foundation with the Lord. And I realized in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14, it says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" And it continues in verse 16. It says, "For we are the temple of the living God. And God said, I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you, and I will be the Father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty." And that was the biggest issue in our relationship. We never went to church together. We never did Bible study together. We never did any of that. But, we would pray before we eat. We'd pray before we go to bed. And it was always like, me praying. He prayed like once or twice throughout the relationship, which I appreciate him like putting in somewhat of an effort. We weren't equally yoked. We didn't put God in the middle of every decision. We did a lot of things wrong before the marriage, which also led to our marriage not being successful, such as, sexual immorality, and, having sex before marriage, and all things of that matter. So that led to our marriage to fall into pieces, and then him committing adultery multiple times without me knowing. That really brought down our marriage. And so everything happens for a reason. Like I said in the beginning, I try to live my life without regrets. If there's anything that I would regret, honestly, I wish I didn't marry this man, but that's something that I can't take back. And at this point in time in my life, I'm kind of grateful that I married this man, only because I learned so much from this relationship. I didn't learn anything from him as an individual, but I learned so much about myself, so much about marriage, so much about relationships. I learned what divorce was like. And so, speaking about divorce, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 31 to 32, it reads, "It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." So there it is, boys and girls. That is the reason why we got divorced, was because of the adultery that he committed. Now that I've experienced what marriage is like, now that I've experienced what divorce is like, I want you guys to just know that marriage isn't easy. Relationships aren't easy. Divorce is really hard. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that for you guys to just kind of know and open your eyes that before you take a really big step with someone in your relationship, like marriage, I really want you guys to consider a lot of things. If you guys are faith-based, if you guys are Christian or whatever you believe in, do your beliefs and your faith align with each other? That's something really important to ask each other if you are a religious or a faith-based person or people. Second, what are your future plans with each other, and do they align with each other? Because, for me in my relationship, I really wanted to grow old with him and get a house with him so soon and have kids with him later down in the line. But for him, that didn't seem like it was the case. So that's something that you need to be aware of. Is this person right for me? Do our future plans and our futures align with each other? And if they don't, that's something you need to take into consideration. And last but not least is just, who they are as a person, their character, their personality, how they treat you, in the dating phases, because I think it is so important to, not stop dating each other. It's important to continue to date each other, because if you have a person who is ready for marriage that is in a relationship with somebody who's not as ready or not ready at all because they're still trying to heal from their childhood or their past traumas or their previous relationships or maybe even their previous marriages, it's like, why take that next step into committing to them for the rest of their life if they're not ready? Because like I said in my last video, I don't think that it's fair. I don't think it is right for people to go into new relationships not fully being healed from, their past relationships, their past trauma, but healing is a constant thing that we do every single day, whether we realize that or not. And so healing can take a lifetime, and sometimes it does, especially for things that are super traumatic. So those are just some things to think about, and I want you guys to be aware of, because I've made plenty of mistakes throughout my life and throughout my relationships that I'm not going to say I regret, but I wish I could do them again if there was any way that I can go back in time. But I am very grateful and I'm blessed. I'm glad that to have gone through those relationships and experienced those things with those specific people, because I wouldn't be the woman of God and I wouldn't be the individual that I am today if it wasn't for any of that. Everything happens for a reason. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. My direct messages are always open. Comment section below will be available to you guys. So yeah, thank you so much for listening and watching, Humble Fam. I will see you guys next Monday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Love you guys. Thank you so much for watching.